Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Orange County School Board's Rule Development Workshop, which has been scheduled for today for the purpose of discussing the following school board policies: GCQF, suspension and dismissal of professional staff, and GDQD, suspension and dismissal. Oh, this is off to a bad start, isn't it? Suspension and dismissal of support staff. IA Student Progression Plan 2021 and IHAM Local School Wellness. Board members are attending either telephonically or in person. I believe that Member Gallo is joining us telephonically. Let me check and see if Member Gallo is on the line with us. Member Gallo, are you there?
I'm here, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. And also our Vice Chair, I believe, is going to be joining us at least for rule development remotely. Okay, she's trying to call in, but not on yet? Okay, so we will check back with her after the Pledge of Allegiance and see if we have her on the line with us. Yes. I want to remind the public and board members that we're not going to be engaging in outside electronic or digital communication during the meeting so that we can focus on the meeting itself. If anyone is trying to reach board members, please do not expect an answer or a response back at this point in time. And also to my fellow board members and to staff and to any members of the public who may be speaking, please make sure that your microphone is turned on and speak directly into it so that our YouTube and Orange TV viewers can hear you correctly. I am so glad that I'm having this problem today and not last week during the State of the Schools. So with that, I'm going to invite you to join us in a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. Now for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Just before we begin, let me just mention that the school board will only be hearing comments during the rule development workshop. We won't be taking our pre-agenda comments that we would have during a regularly scheduled meeting. So any comments we'll be taking will need to be related to one of the policies that we're addressing. I'll open it up to public comment during the appropriate time. At this point, I do have one speaker card. If there's anybody else in the audience that hasn't completed one of these cards that is here to speak, please do so at this time. And I think, given that we only have one speaker card, yes, ma'am? Oh, well, thank you. Someone passed down a note. Was that Dr. Jenkins? Yes. That the room is all staff and one speaker. So, welcome, staff. Welcome, one speaker. All right, with that, I don't think I need to read through the rest of our public comments. Mr. Klein has been with us quite a few times, and I bet he could recite this as well as I could at this point. So with that, Dr. Jenkins, I'm going to turn it over to you for School Board Policy GCQF and GDQD.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. We are at the point of rule development. That means you have already had discussion on most of these policies in workshop. This is the opportunity for any final input as we advertise and then take it to a board meeting for full approval. We're going to start with the HR-related policies. Jim Preuss is going to walk us through. Jim?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Jacobs, distinguished board members, and Superintendent Jenkins. So my focus will be on the policy GCQF and policy GDQD. So today in our agenda, we're going to have an overview of the purpose of these changes to the policy, the timeline associated with the policy changes in terms of what we've done and what we intend to do, summary of actions, proposed revisions that we'll speak to you about, and then next steps, and then we'll end it with questions and discussion between the superintendent and the board. So the purpose of the proposed revisions for these two policies that I'll speak to here in a moment really have to do with ensuring that we're meeting applicable federal and state laws, any state Board of Education rules by the state of Florida, board policies that may be in place currently, administrative rules, procedures, and guidelines. So let's talk about the tentative schedule and the timeline. So we've already met with Cabinet back on November the 1st. Obviously, today we're here to discuss the rule development workshop for these two policies. And then hopefully we'll have board approval at the next board meeting, which would be December the 14th. And the effective date would be the same, December the 14th. So I'll start with policy GCQF. So what's the purpose? And again, this is specific to the professional staff. When I talk about the other policy, that policy will be specific to the support staff. So the policy is being revised to ensure consistent application of the criminal background screening process for professional staff. And what I'll show to you in a moment are some of the revisions and or additions. In this particular case, there is no policy, so it is an addition. It is new language that we're adding to the policy. So current state, again, this is professional staff, current state, and the description is falsification of an employment application. There is no current language for that. So what we've done here is we've added the following. With regard to applicants, if the falsification involves a failure to disclose an arrest, conviction, nolo contendere plea, withhold of adjudication, pretrial diversion, pretrial intervention for any felony or misdemeanor crime other than those disqualifying offenses defined in section 10-12-315 in the Florida statutes, and this is the important part, an applicant may reapply 1 year after submission of the original application. So let me give you an example. If I fill out an application today, November 16th, 2021, and I failed to disclose, on November 16th, 2022, I could reapply. All right, let's move to policy GDQD. And the focus here would be support staff. Again, the purpose is the same. We're looking for some consistency with respect to the criminal background screening process for the support staff. With regards to the policy itself, there is no current language. We've added two pieces. So I'll start with number 4 because I just read that to you. That is exactly the same as it was in the professional staff policy. With respect to number 3, we've added that language because in the current policy, there was a reference back to GCQF. So instead of referencing back to another policy, we've actually embedded language into GDQD so that it's very clear, okay? And at this point, I will turn it over to Mary Bridges, who will talk to you about the IA policy. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Policy IA is the student progression plan. Today, I will review revisions made for the 21-22 school year. The purpose and action summary is to revise existing policy language to include legislative updates, content, formatting, and terminology edits consistent with statutory language. The first revision is the addition of the new BEST standards on page 14. The current policy states that the district provides support for teachers to implement the Florida standards and the next generation Sunshine State standards. The new BEST standards were added to the existing standards. Proposed changes for grade classifications on page 76 are being made in order to accurately portray how grade classification is now determined. According to current policy, a student is considered a 9th grader until they have acquired 5 high school credits. At that point, they are classified as a 10th grader. They are an 11th grader when they have 11 credits, and a 12th grader when they have 18 or more. This is not applicable now that students have the opportunity to take high school courses before they enter high school, and through other opportunities such as virtual school. For example, if a student completes Algebra 1, Geometry, High School Physical Science, and Spanish 1 in middle school, and then takes Hope in OCPS the summer before high school, they would have 5 credits. According to the current policy, they would be classified as a 10th grader. This could cause situations with many school functions, such as sports and grade-specific activities. The recommended change is to follow the FDOE cohort system. This states if a student begins high school in 2021, they are part of a 4-year cohort that should graduate in 2025. Therefore, as stated in the revised recommendation, the student is a 9th grader their first year in high school, a 10th grader their second, an 11th grader their third, and a 12th grader their 4th year. The last revision is to add the requirement of the new Civic literacy test on page 91. The new policy language adds that beginning in 2021-2022, students taking U.S. government will be required to take the assessment of civic literacy pursuant to section 1007.254 of Florida statute. And now I will turn it over to Amy Enval for policy IHAM.
Thank you. Ms. Bridges, can I ask you to run my can I ask you
Yes.
to click through the slides for me, since I'm a little bit far away? All right, I'm going to go over the revisions, the proposed revisions to policy IHAM, which is your local school wellness policy. Ms. Gilbert is in the audience if you have any questions about it, but section 1003.453 of the Florida statutes requires that the school board annually review its local school wellness policy and provide a procedure for public input and revisions. There's no substantive changes recommended during this year's annual review. However, there's been some minor changes to formatting into the revision-approved history to ensure transparency and consistency. And so our rule development workshop and then our school board meeting on the 14th will provide the public with that opportunity for public input. Next slide. The current policy, it says at the very, very bottom, it's the last page. That's why there aren't any other red lines changes. It says adopted, revised, approved, revised, and it's kind of confusing. So the proposed revision keeps adopted the date, all the revision dates, and the approved dates. And what it does is it adds a little asterisk to the approved dates, which basically said, you can see in the second set of blocks there, it used to say in compliance with section 1003.453 Florida statutes policy IHAM was publicly noticed and open for review at the June 6, 2013 work session. No changes were made from the previous year's version of the policy. Now, whenever we go through and there's not going to be any substantive changes, the proposed language is in compliance with section 1003.453 Florida statutes policy IHAM was publicly noticed and open for review at a rule development workshop and subsequent board meeting. However, no substantive changes were made from the previous year's version of the policy. So that's just a minor revision, it's just technical. So our next steps are, for all 4 policies, are revisions to our internal procedures if needed, and also training for OCPS employees regarding those revisions and any new procedures that might need to be implemented.
Madam Chair, members of the board, that concludes your presentation for the policies before you. Happy to entertain any questions you might have and listen to your comments.
All right, thank you. We have 2 board members queued up to speak, and we also have 1 member of the public. If the board, without objection, we normally take the public first, so let's hear first from Mr. Klein. Welcome, Mr. Klein.
So I had a whole speech that I was going to say, but since watching the presentation first, it kind of gave me switched it up a little bit. So looking at the presentation for a falsified application, so if there was no current policy, then the policy prior to that, which, in my case, which policy did I violate? So, or whatever potential employees would, if they were accused of falsifying on their application, what reference was referenced if there was no current policy? And the main thing that's still not addressed in all these rule changes is the appeal process. I think that, in my opinion, is the thing that needs to be changed the most. The policy of criminal background checks, asking questions, I believe it's all right. It protects the students, protects staff. It's the appeal process for people that may have not known it was on there, or in my case, did not know it was there. I think the appeal process needs to be revamped, and there's got to be some transparency when they come up with an appeal summary and they give a statement that you willfully falsified when you supplied them evidence that you had no idea was there. And so that appeal summary, which I requested, is a legal, I guess it's a legal document, and now I'm accused of willfully falsifying and, questioning my morality and my integrity and all that. So I just think the appeal process is something that needs to be really looked at. And again, I think it more needs to be sitting with the committee, at least having a face-to-face where, I know you want to take that out of it and you don't want any personal, but I think it needs to be there to kind of like explain instead of submitting all your paper to a generic email and hoping that you've satisfied the appeal committees, what they needed. And, I think that's it. It's just an opportunity to meet with the appeal board in person. And that's basically it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And let me try to answer the first part of the question. And Ms. Emval, if I get this wrong, please jump in and well, when I get done,
Okay.
correct me. Actually, it's not specifically in policy, and it was one of the concerns that I and other board members had. It has been the way the district has operated, and it's been based on the policy that deals with employees that are already employed, that we learn later either did not complete their application correctly or subsequently had a misdemeanor or a criminal violation, felony violation that they didn't report. And so that was then used as the basis for something that's been going on for at least 10 years, probably much longer. And so from a consistency standpoint, I know that the staff had a lot of concerns about just changing it. And so the reason we're putting it in policy is to make it more clear and to give us a basis on which to do this. Having said all that, and I know that it's okay for us all to disagree on things. I actually always tell people that if they see a board disagreeing or they see board and staff disagreeing, they should not walk away troubled. They should probably walk away feeling good that we feel comfortable enough to have these discussions. What I love about serving on this board is that when we do have these disagreements, we are always respectful and cordial to each other. So I will tell you that I understand the reason for the appeal process not being face-to-face, but I don't agree with it either. And I don't know how this board, or this organization, deals with appeals of vendor or procurement applications. So I know in Orange County, the process was you appealed and you sat down with the appeals board, which at one point was the same board, which I also, when I was in Orange County as a commissioner, was successful in changing that so that you were appealing to a different group of people. And you appealed person to person, kind of that concept of the right to confront your accusers. This isn't exactly accuser, but it kind of is, because you have a person saying, I didn't willfully, and I'm not just talking about Mr. Klein. You all know we've had, I think, 5 this year, and I think some of them have been pretty compelling cases of not believing that what their past reflected what the form said. So with that, not being able to sit down with somebody face-to-face or the committee and be able to answer questions and have that back and forth. What actually happened? Why did you do this? Why didn't you think it was here? I would prefer that. That doesn't need to be in our policy. It could be in our policy. It's just my personal opinion, but I did want to share it with the board while we have this opportunity. I've also asked our staff to take a look at the forms, because one of the things that troubled me on one of the forms, I think it's the last, kind of your last chance to correct, it's called a criminal history form. And when I think of criminal history, if I was falsely arrested and if I went through a trial and was found innocent, if you asked me if I had criminal history, I would automatically think and divert to, I don't have criminal history. And I might be a little prickly about the fact that I don't have criminal history if I was found innocent. So since we're really talking about, do you have any records, or were you ever arrested, regardless of whether you're innocent or not, I wanted to change that term from criminal history to something that's broader that might not lead somebody to mislead it and just check no, no, no. So, and we've had those conversations. That doesn't need to be in this policy. We've had very productive, positive conversations with the team about just looking and making sure that everything we do on our end is in no way, not only just not misleading, is as informative as possible, which no question about it, that has been the intent of the organization. That's why there's an oral, supposed to be at least, an oral reminder and then a last chance, something that many districts don't do. So I'm not impugning anybody's integrity on our staff either. I just think we can. One of the things that I reiterated in the State of the Schools, Dr. Jenkins, after Maria read it, I loved this statement by Cognia, was that, I forget the gentleman's name, that we're an organization that is committed to continuous improvement. And so likewise, I think we can always look for help. We can do this better. And then I also want to point out, if there are any concerns with the language that we have or anything that anybody wants to have added, we have, as we always do, we have the ability to approve something today. And if we want to come back and tweak it in the future for any reason, we can. If we don't approve it today, as you all know, we re-advertise and we start over again. So Member Kester-Dental, you're recognized, and then Member Felder.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to talk about two different issues, but I'll start with the one that we started with Mr. Preuser. I appreciate the language clarification for those who are applying. For those who did not disclose a matter, that would not have prevented them from being hired had they revealed that information. I agree that allowing them the opportunity to apply the next year makes it so that we're not lowering our standards or weakening them. We still have expectations of our employees, but since some of this information or the language that we use could be misunderstood, I think it's fair to allow that person to reapply as long as they are forthcoming with whatever information they left out last time, especially if that was not going to be something that prevented them from being hired. I think that's an important step. I hope that we can do something similar for the parents who would like to volunteer later. Also, I can see how the language in the forms that people use can also be tricky, and I'm glad that we have a chance to put our eyes on that and just kind of try to look at it from an applicant's point of view. I think that can trip them up unnecessarily. And then back to the pupil or the student progression plan. I have a question. I like the clarity, but I have a question. You said that you're not looking at a student's number of credits to assign them a grade level, but the years that they're in. But I just want to make sure that this doesn't really prevent a student from graduating early if they get their 24 credits before the end of their 12th grade.
Yeah, absolutely. And we had that discussion right before we came in here saying, I'm sure somebody will ask that question. So, no, the acceleration statute, the Florida acceleration states that you can easily, we can use that to say a student at the end of their 10th grade year has 17 credits, and so they want to graduate a year early, then we could use the acceleration and just make them a senior that following fall, and then they would finish out their years.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Felder.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair Jacobs. Just one sort of comment when you talked about wellness. And I know that prior to my coming on this board as a teacher, we did have a wellness representative at the school to make sure we were teachers were coming together. So my concern with what has transpired, the pandemic and coming back and just a lot of issues, and of course, some of the media talking about teachers leaving, teachers hearing teachers leaving, and that adds an added pressure. My concern is there something in place, and maybe you said it and I missed it, but is there something in place who can, like, quarterly check on the emotional well-being of teachers? Because I know that, I don't remember exactly how it was done, but I know that at some point, sometimes we would have a massage person come in or whatever, but I'm just talking about a time, maybe in the form of and I know teachers hate this, professional development, but some way to check on our teachers and I guess administrators too, their well-being, because I saw wellness. And I think that not just in writing, but I need it to be done because, well, I'd like to have it done because I know that I think we've done well as a district. We have really, God has blessed us to weather through some very difficult storms. And, but there are more storms to come. And it's probably going to be more excruciating when they get here. So I'm just hoping, or I'm asking, that when you talk about wellness, that there's really something in place to deal with it. And I'm just going to share this and I will stop. I remember once teaching Dr. Phillips. I guess I was probably in my 11th or 12th year of teaching. And I remember calling OCPS, calling the district, and I wanted to speak to somebody that dealt with people who have psychological issues. I can't remember what it was, but I talked to somebody from the district, and I introduced myself and said, I'm having a nervous breakdown. And the person from the district said, Ms. Felder, people who are having nervous breakdowns don't know they're having a nervous breakdown. You're not having a nervous breakdown. Just take 2 days off, then come back to work. And it worked, but I'm just saying, I said I need to check myself in the hospital because I think I'm losing my mind. But I wasn't, because people who are at that point, they don't know that. So I'm laughing about it now, but I was very seriously thinking that I was in my 11th or 12th year of teaching. And I was at Dr. Phillips. And I remember sitting in the lounge calling the district and talking to that department up here. So when I saw the wellness, it just perked a memory thing in my head that I hope that we do have something in place that's not intimidating, but easy enough, and for teachers, administrators to really talk about what they're going through. And she was right. The person who I talked to was very nice, and I took 2 or 3 days off, and I was fine. You know, 'cause I was getting ready to check in the hospital and get a psychological evaluation, all that kind of stuff. Vicky said, Ms. Felder, people that are having a breakdown, they don't know it. So you're not having a breakdown. You just need to rest. And that's exactly what needed to happen. But I'm just wanted to mention that when I saw the wellness, if we could do that, I would be happy to meet with you personally. You can show me what you're doing so I can see it. But I'm very serious about that because I think what we've just experienced and what we're going to experience in the coming year, because the pandemic is not over, we may need that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Member Felder. Okay, I have a couple of questions. I want to follow up first on Member Castor-Dental's question about having a similar policy or practice in place regarding volunteers. So, is this a question for Mr. Preuss? Dr. Jenkins?
Yeah, so we actually have in queue the volunteer policy. We can add some information there as well. We decided not to try to run that one parallel to these policies. It'll be coming down the pike.
Okay. And do we know when that's coming down the pike?
No, we're working on it. We need to get the B policies through first, and then we'll do volunteers.
Okay. Okay, so just out of curiosity, because we don't have a policy that says that we can't hire people, and we've always relied on the policy that we're changing right now for evaluating our volunteers, then where does that leave volunteers in the interim period of time? You know what I'm saying? We didn't have a policy that
Yeah, we won't
requires
change
you-
we won't change current practice until we bring something to the board.
Okay, even though the current practice was based on a policy we just changed.
I don't feel comfortable changing anything about volunteers. If you recall, we have some litigation pending as well about volunteers, so I want to let that remain steady until we bring it to the board.
Okay. The other question, I am still a little confused about what happens to a student that's ahead of schedule and has the credits that they need to graduate in their third year. Then doesn't that mean they miss out on their senior year if we change this? I'm confused about that, I'm sorry.
Yes, so if they want to graduate early, then they can use that acceleration statute, and as soon as they have their 24 credits or their 18 credits that they need, they can graduate. What this policy, or what this change is trying to make sure that they can have that 4 years if they choose to have it. So they're just, when they start high school, they start their freshman year is their first year in high school, and their 10th grade year is their second, their 11th grade year is their third, and their 12th grade year is their fourth, regardless of how many credits they have.
Okay, I missed the why, and you might have covered it. Maybe I was just zoned out. Now I understand why this is to the advantage of some students. What about those students who actually want to graduate in their third year? They want to go on to college. They don't want to stay around for their fourth year, but then they miss prom and well, I mean, they can go as a junior, but they miss some of the senior activities.
That would be their choice. If they choose to graduate early, they're choosing to miss out on that. In our current policy, they would still miss out on that.
No, what Ms. Bridges is saying is they can spend their fourth year with us, but if they choose to leave and graduate in their third year, then they don't have a senior year. The senior activities, they're not part of.
Well, no, if they
have an option either or?
Yeah, if they, at the end of their 10th grade year, if they had 17 credits, so it looks like they can graduate at the end of their junior year, then they could be promoted to a senior, and then they could have all of their senior activities that third year.
Can we go back and look at that policy one more time? Because I was a little concerned based on what you described. It looked like we were,
What this policy is saying is that they have those 4 years, but the acceleration statute states that you can skip a year. So if they were able to graduate, then you would just use that acceleration policy, and then in Skyward, you would just skip that year, and they would be considered a senior. So
Okay.
that's not in this policy. That wouldn't be part of this.
does this need to reference that is also, I mean, obviously the statute is always an option, but,
It's in the progression plan,
okay.
in a section, a different section. Aaron's looking it up right now, but yes.
So if I'm looking at the progression plan, it's clear to me I have two choices.
Yes.
Anne's looking maybe a little.
Yes, you have the option to participate in all of your senior activities that last year.
Okay, if that last year's a year early, or if you defer that last year
Yes,
and stay on.
absolutely.
Thank you, then I feel wonderful about this. Okay. All right. Member Castrodeno. Oh, I haven't kept up with this, have I? Member Castrodeno.
Yeah, thank you. That made me have another question for Ms. Bridges. Just like a student could graduate early, what would happen if there was a student who, let's say it was a 11th grade student with only 10 credits? It's their third year in high school. They only have 10 credits. Would they still be considered an 11th grader?
Yes, so we don't retain, so they'd still be considered an 11th grader. What we try to do is just, again, we work on the credits towards that graduation. So we
Okay.
would, between that time, we'd be hopefully having them make up the credits in time to still graduate with their cohort.
Okay. I wish they did that in college. That way, if you were there for 4 years, you're done. You can graduate. All right, thank you.
Okay, anything else? We have no other board members. Let me check and see if Member Gould has been with us on the line. Member Gould? Vice Chair? Okay, was anybody, okay. I just, for the record, I wanted us to be able to count her as present or absent, and I realized I did not circle back with her. All right, anything else, Dr. Jenkins? All right, and the meeting this afternoon, the next meeting is scheduled for what time? 3 o'clock. All right, we have a nice long recess for a change. Okay, or lunch. We are adjourned. We'll be back at the hour of 3 o'clock for our reorganization meeting.